Dozens, and we're happy to see all of you here. This webinar is an initiative of Montreal International with support of Canada's Trade Commissioner Service, along with Sweden's Business Sweden. And it's our understanding that you are here because you are interested in doing business with or at Montreal or Canada. And we basically want to show you why Canada is not only a fantastic base to do business in and from, but also a great gateway to North America. And definitely Montreal is something worth considering. Montreal will speak to that in a few seconds. I just mentioned three organizations: the Trade Commissioner Service, Business Sweden, and Montreal International. Business Sweden and Montreal International will present themselves. So just a few brief words on the Trade Commissioner Service. It's the Canadian federal government's agency for promotion of trade, helping Canadian companies do business outside of Canada and helping foreign companies do business in Canada. There are some similarities between the Trade Commissioner Service and Business Sweden. So when this is done, I highly recommend that you contact not only Montreal International, but also Business Sweden and the Trade Commissioner Services. We have the same interest at heart, which is to help you do business in North America. And both organizations have complementary and slightly overlapping services that can help you very much along the way. So with that said, I want to go on to my presentation. I have quite a few slides, but it is my understanding that you will receive a copy of this presentation afterwards. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the slides. Rather, I'm just going to almost rush through it because I want you to have time to listen from Paul Baptista from Ericsson and the good folks at Montreal International. And what I want you to take away from this is just the sense that Canada is a fantastic place to do business in and a great gateway to the North American market. So to begin with, I wanted to show that Canada ranks first in the G20 in business environments, according to The Economist, and Forbes also ranks Canada sixth in the entire world for ease of doing business. The Canadian economy is very strong and has consistently been outperforming other economies over the last few years. For the last year that we have figures for, 2019, Canada grew the second highest in all the G20 countries at 1.7%. And again, that's a stable and consistently outperforming other competitors. Canada is really strong in ICT, information communication technologies, with four subsectors that stand out. They are software development, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, digital media, games, and visual effects. But there are others and several industries that contribute to these subsectors and other sectors as well. Canada is a great base. Not many people know this, but over 90% of the population lives about 2 hours from the US border, which, as you surely know, includes New York, Boston, Seattle, Chicago, and many other cities. And one point that's very important and worth noting is that at this period in time, when so many countries are doing trade wars and sanctions, and two of them we all know, Canada has preferred market access with over 51 countries in Asia, Latin America, Africa, so not only North America, and that's definitely something to bear in mind. Canada has the lowest marginal effective tax rate in all of the G7. You see Germany there about in the middle with 25%. As you know, Sweden is similar to Germany. Canada has only 13.8, which I'm sure is very attractive. There are several support schemes, financial incentives that the Canadian government offers. And when you look at this at your leisure later, I will ask you to pay particular attention to bullet number 3, which is IRAP, but there are many others. And when this is done, you're welcome to contact me, as well as Business Sweden and Montreal International, to get more information on other provincial schemes that Montreal can talk about and federal ones that we can talk about. Canada has a great and very educated and skilled labor force. I think only losing to India and France in the amount of available engineers, and also in all OECD countries, Canada is outstanding in that over half of the working population has higher degrees. That figure for Sweden is about 43%, and Sweden is already outstanding, so that shows that Canada really is truly remarkable. We welcome in Canada foreign talent, and it takes about 2 weeks to process visas and work permits for people who have high skills. We have, to sum up, several services that we can offer. We can help you with market intelligence and due diligence. We can help you build a business case. We can help connect you to people in the government sector and in the private sector. We can help you with site selection. We have incredible amounts of information that is useful and relevant to you if you're thinking of doing business in Canada. And we can also help you with taxation, regulation, and other business advice. So we welcome your contact so that we can pass that on to you. And so to sum it up, there are many reasons to be in Canada. It has a very attractive business climate, a stable economy, and it's very welcoming for entrepreneurs and new business. It really promotes research and development and innovation. It gives you access to several markets around the world, more than perhaps any other country in the world. It has a very skilled labor force, a dynamic workforce as well, and it has a very bright future when we extrapolate from the past. And with that, you have my contact information here. I really do welcome your contact, and I look forward to hearing how we can help you. And with that, I pass the word over to my friend Christina over at Business Sweden. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uffe. Great presentation, and we use a lot of those type of information when we promote Canada to Swedish companies as well. Let's see if we can get my presentation on the screen. There. So I am not going to go into as much depth as Uffe did in his presentation, but I just want to let you know that Business Sweden, or the Swedish Trade and Invest Council, as we are also called, we are here in Canada and could be your local partner. We have been here for many years, but here is just a snapshot of our very global presence, I would say. We have 47 offices around the world, and in North America, we are located in Toronto, New York, Washington, Chicago, and San Francisco, and Mexico City. And we are a government, half-owned government organization and 50% owned by the industry in Sweden. So we have a very unique mandate. We report to Foreign Affairs, but we work as management consultants on behalf of Swedish companies. And our role and our vision is, of course, to help Swedish companies to grow global sales, but also to support foreign companies to invest in Sweden. And we do this in many different ways. It could be market expansion with market entries, or sales setup, or merger and acquisitions project, or we can help Swedish companies to increase their sales. But we do have this unique mandate that we work on behalf of the Swedish government. So we work very closely with both our embassy in Ottawa, the Swedish embassy, and we have we work in a Team Sweden effort, both with the Chamber of Commerce, embassies, and our own staff. And we have good relationship with the Canadian embassy in Stockholm as well. We also offer something called business incubation and operation. That is a very practical service for small Swedish companies that want to do business in Canada and would like support when it comes to administration and bookkeeping, paying taxes, payroll, and things like that. So we have a team in our office that deals just with that type of work. So we can go to the next slide. There. So this is our team in Toronto. There is 6 of us. We have a mix of Canadian and Swedish nationals in our office. We have been in Canada for over 50 years, and we have extensive experience with helping Swedish companies grow in Canada. We have decided to focus on a few industries where we see that there are lots of synergies as well as opportunities between Sweden and Canada. And as Uffe pointed out in his presentation, you can see that Sweden and Canada has a lot in common. But some of the industry that we have focused on is infrastructure, mining, forestry, healthcare, and the retail industry. So we are growing our expertise in those particular areas. Of course, the digitalization and AI industry is sort of tied into all of those sectors. But we are super happy to talk to Swedish companies that want to talk about Canada. We love Canada, and we are always happy to support any Swedish companies that want to know more about Canada. So I think I'll stop there and let the rest of the speakers take over from here. And I will be available after the webinar if anyone wants to reach out. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina. And I do think that Business Sweden has complementary services to what Montreal International offers, especially when it comes to helping Swedish companies setting up in Montreal precisely. So there's a complementarity as far as I can see. And thanks, Uffe, for the intro and for making this happen today. We're really glad to be able to speak to Swedish companies today. So with that, maybe I'm going to introduce myself real quick. So I'm Alain Batley. I'm in charge of the team that oversees, that supports European companies with a focus in the tech sector, setting up and expanding in Montreal. And today with me, I have Anna Soler, who's a project director covering Europe as well at Montreal International, and Mona Lisa Prosper, project manager directly in my team, to present a few slides to you. Mona Lisa, the floor is yours, and then Hannah, you'll take over, and I'll get back to you guys right after, before we pass the microphone to Paul Baptista that you've been probably waiting for. Mona Lisa.
Yes, thank you, Alan. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to virtually be with you this afternoon in Sweden and this morning in Montreal. So I'll start by just talking a little bit more specifically about Montreal, our great city. So Montreal is known for being very diverse and multicultural, and that's partly due to the fact that 34% of the city, of the population is foreign-born. On the economic side, it has had the best economic growth in Canada in both 2018 and 2019. And it has attracted $2.6 billion in foreign direct investment in 2019, supported by Montreal International. In terms of geography and situation, what's interesting with Montreal is that it's only a 90-minute flight to Boston and New York, and less than an hour drive to the U.S. border. So it makes it very, very close to the East Coast of America and East Coast of the United States, and of course the rest of the United States as well. With regards to thriving hubs and big ecosystems, Montreal has the highest concentration of deep learning researchers in the world. It's the largest VFX and animation hub in Canada, and a VFX world leader. It's within the top 5 largest video game development hubs in the world, and the second largest aerospace hub in North America. It's also highly ranked in many other thriving industries, such as life sciences and health technologies. We're talking about cybersecurity, fintech and financial services, electric and smart transportation. So we have a very, very strong ecosystem. On the right side of this slide, you'll see the logos of many major companies that chose Montreal for their international subsidiaries, such as SAP, CAE, Google, CGI, just to name a few. As I mentioned in the past slide, we have a very, very strong artificial intelligence ecosystem, and that's partly due to the fact that one of what we call the fathers of artificial intelligence, his home is in Montreal. His name is Yoshua Bengio. He's the founder and scientific director of the MILA, which is a research institute in artificial intelligence. So not only are we strong in AI, but we're also at the forefront of AI for Good initiatives. So all of these companies on this slide are either mainly focused on AI for Good or have a department that has a specific focus on AI for Good. So some of them are in the healthcare industries, others are, tackling diversity and inclusion, issues, and, on the grand scheme of things, just AI for Good initiatives. Also, an interesting fact about Montreal. So about 2 days ago, it was the official launch of what we call the International Center of Expertise in Montreal for the advancement of artificial intelligence. So it's a very long name, but its creation was done by handled by Montreal International, but it's much larger than that. It's been born out of the collaboration of the Quebec government, the Canadian government, and lots of international and the international community at large. The other center of expertise is actually located in Paris. The one in Montreal will be focused on responsible AI and data governance. And all other interesting facts about artificial intelligence. So since 2016, there has been more than $2 billion in AI investments in Greater Montreal. The Canadian government also chose Montreal as the headquarters of Scale AI, which is Canada's AI supply chain supercluster. And as you can see there on the bottom of the slide, there's a sample of the major players located in Greater Montreal: Mila, Ivado, Google, Facebook, Thales, Element AI, just to name a few. So now I will let Anna take the lead.
Thank you, Mona. And I will dive a little bit more into the innovative manufacturing industry. Given the fact that the manufacturing industry is one of the most important pillars of the Quebec economy, it's the second most important industry for the province. And this is also the reason why the government introduced a strong support for especially innovative manufacturers to foster the digital transformation for manufacturers located in Quebec. So a few years ago, the government of Quebec and its partners, they launched the Innovative Manufacturers Initiative. And this initiative is really there to provide support to manufacturers making the shift to the Industry 4.0. The initiative does that through different tools such as finances, incentives, and this is supposed to encourage the Quebec manufacturing companies to implement new technologies and innovative solutions such as IoT platforms, connectivity, sensing and imaging, robotics, additive manufacturing, and also the supply chain and the optimization of the supply chain. So this really brings together two provincial strategies, the Quebec Digital Strategy and also the Research and Innovation Strategy. And as you can see on the side of the slides, we do have a lot of multinational companies who are here to equip and service in robotics and automation, such as ABB, Siemens. But we also do have some more local hidden champions, such as Vention, which is a Quebec company supporting manufacturers to do the shift to 4.0. So Montreal was chosen as a headquarter for Scale AI, which is the Canadian AI supply chain supercluster. And this supercluster is really dedicated to building the next generation supply chain and boosting the industry performance by leveraging AI technologies. So this will be important for many different industries. AI is a transversal and will be important for retail, for fashion, for transport industry, but of course also for the manufacturing industry, given the fact that the supply chain is an important part of manufacturing activities. And what is interesting about the Scale AI and the cluster is the ecosystem which it kind of supports, but also the financing tools they have. So there can be up to 40% of financing for eligible costs for research projects in AI, but also there's financial support to develop artificial and digital intelligence skills, and there's funding for training for talent, which is especially crucial for the manufacturing industry, as this is a lot of times the missing part for manufacturing companies, as technology and AI is not the main activity. And another advantage and strong point for Montreal is the booming startup ecosystem we do have here. So according to the OECD, Canada is the most attractive country in the world for entrepreneurs. Since 2018 only in Montreal, there have been invested more than $1.7 billion in VC investments. And what is really crucial here in Montreal is that 6 of the 8 most active VCs are headquartered and located here in Greater Montreal. And of course, we also have an ecosystem supporting those young companies like incubators, accelerators, either together with the universities such as Centec, which is the accelerator of engineering school here, the McGill Accelerator, District 3, and so on. But we also do have private incubators, accelerators such as Techstars, Next AI, Founder Fuel, and so on. And of course, there's also Montreal is a big city, so we do have a lot of co-working space here, WeWork spaces, and all the others have big offices here. So this is something very attractive for young companies who are starting their activities here in Greater Montreal. And with this, I will hand over to Alan. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, and thanks, Mona Lisa. So with that, the combination of some strengths in some verticals in Montreal, whether video game, animation, or more horizontal capabilities such as AI, cybersecurity, it goes without saying that Montreal is a tech hub, and it has the highest concentration of tech jobs in Canada. To be fully fair, we usually say that obviously the number of tech jobs in Toronto is slightly higher than in Montreal, just because the city of Toronto is bigger than Montreal. But when it comes to the number of tech jobs, as opposed to the total number of jobs, Montreal is by far has a higher concentration than in Toronto or any other city in Canada, and is comparable to what you would find on the west coast of the US. Something that's really interesting for Montreal as well, when you consider establishing in Montreal, is the cost of operations. Very attractive cost of operations, not only because of the FX rate. The Canadian dollar is less strong than the US dollar, so that's one of the advantage. But FX rate aside, Montreal offers very competitive cost of operations, whether it's the real estate, the salaries. It's not very costly to operate in Montreal. On the left-hand side of the graph here, you see that in manufacturing sectors, it's already pretty interesting, above 20% cheaper than in the largest US or Canadian cities. But the more you go into the tech sector, where salaries tend to be high, the more interesting it becomes, up to 30% advantage when it comes to artificial intelligence or software development. So if you operate in the tech sector and you want to develop IP, digital IP, Montreal is really a good place to consider. Like I said, in part, but not only, explained by the salaries. The cost of living in Montreal is pretty affordable, so you don't have to run the salary race, and you don't have to offer a significant raise to keep your talent. Like in other cities, like in the Silicon Valley, New York, Boston, or maybe in some extent in Toronto as well. As you can see, it can be twice cheaper to hire someone, a software engineer in Montreal, for instance, than in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, for instance. So pretty interesting on the salary side. And also predictable. Salaries have increased, obviously, during the past 10 years, but probably not as fast as in some cities of the US. So rather predictable. On top of that, there are, like many geographies offer, incentives. In Quebec and in Montreal, the government doesn't write check for you to open a factory or to open an R&D center, but they will give you incentives to create jobs, qualified jobs, and to develop intellectual property, to do R&D. So the cost of energy is very affordable and entirely renewable. I mean, electricity here is 99% renewable. It's hydroelectricity, some of the cheapest in the world, which is a good thing in winter because you need to heat your place. So I'm glad I don't pay what I used to pay when I was living in France. And on the tax credit side, there are some video game development specific tax incentives, some of the most generous worldwide, multimedia production, so visual effects, for instance, and then more generally for IP development, R&D, software development, there are pretty generous tax incentives as well, up to 30% that are available. So it comes on top of the competitive cost of operations and salaries. I think it's usually what makes companies choose Montreal over other locations. It's the combination of those factors. And also there are some other types of incentives in the lower left side of the slide to develop and train your people. So if you plan on upscaling your workforce, there are some incentives available as well. I was on the phone yesterday, a video call with a Swedish company actually that's looking at North America to further expand. And one question that we often get, and it proved me that that company had done some homework, is we were often compared to Austin in Texas. And the question that I got was, what's really the main difference between Austin and Montreal? Aside from winter and climate, you have a lot more collaboration, academic collaboration opportunities in Montreal, just because of the size of the city compared to Austin, and also the number of universities here. Montreal is really the university city of Canada. 11 universities, institutions, 60 colleges, over 300,000 students, a lot of them being foreign students. They stay here after they graduate because they love Montreal. And there is a collaborative spirit in Montreal, a culture of collaboration, not only between universities and companies, but also between companies. So there's a word here that we call co-petition, kind of a mix of cooperation and competition, because it's a kind of a mindset. So there is competition, but there are probably more opportunities for collaboration than in other places. It's a cultural thing. I think Mona Lisa mentioned this a little bit earlier, very diverse community here in Montreal. Most of the population is bilingual here, so you would probably think that Montreal is French, and you need to speak French to open a business in Montreal, to open a subsidiary in Montreal and operate here. There are many people who live here strictly in English. There are actually a native community in Montreal that only speaks English. It's really half and half. Depending on some neighborhoods in Montreal, it's mostly English speaking. And not only are we bilingual, but a lot of people are also trilingual, because it's an immigration country, in an immigration city, in an immigration country, and so you have people from everywhere. And myself, I've been living here for almost 10 years now, but I come from Europe. You take the bus, and sometimes I'm not even able to tell you what language people speak. So all kinds of languages, a little bit common to the rest of Canada, to be honest. Like I mentioned a little bit before, low cost of living, very affordable. Your rents, you find a very nice place, nice apartment for $1,500 in Montreal. I'm not even sure you can find a place for $1,500 in New York. So this is why when it comes to retaining your talent, you don't have to run the salary race. You are able to retain people based on quality of life, work-life balance, and your employees will not necessarily ask for a salary raise as often as they would do in other cities where the cost of living keeps increasing and people have to keep up with it. I'm a big believer that Quebec has a lot in common with Nordic countries, including Sweden. We have a maybe not as generous, but probably very much comparable healthcare system, social system. Daycare is $8 a day here, so for your kids, very affordable. University degrees are very affordable. If you're a Quebec resident, it's $4,000 a year. It's 4-5 times that in the US or in other provinces in Canada. It's a lot more comparable. I've met a number of Swedish people coming to Montreal and telling me we feel home here. It's a lot more comparable in terms of the mindset we have, the place of women in society, how we interact with each other. It has a lot more in common than the rest of Canada. A lot more European here. Montreal has these both sides of European, North American city. The quality of life, I mentioned this. You can see the ranking here. Data speaks for themselves. Affordable quality of life. Very safe to walk at night. Rather educated people, and very vibrant. A lot of festivals. The highest number of restaurants per capita. Foods from all over the world. Places, venues to go out. Can't wait to see them opening again. So with that, I'm going to pass the microphone to Paul. I think this is the time you've been waiting for. So Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon in Europe. First of all, thank you to the partners that brought me to this webinar, Montreal International, Business Sweden, and the Canadian embassies. Thank you for this opportunity. So I'm going to speak to you about Ericsson and Ericsson in Montreal. I'm born and raised in Montreal from Portuguese parents that immigrated to Canada, and I spent a better part of my career at Ericsson as well. So I'll give you a little bit of discussion on why Montreal. So this is the kind of topics I'll cover: a little bit of history, a little bit of facts about Ericsson, and the ecosystem in Montreal. So first of all, some facts about Ericsson in Canada. We're approximately 2,500 professionals. We've been 67 years in Canada. Few people know that. And we've generated 2,000 patents from our Canadian staff, Canadian offices. We're one of the top R&D firms in Canada, and that's across sectors. So even though it's a big spot for aerospace and for pharma and other life sciences, we consistently invest so much in R&D that we rank in the top 10 in Canada, even against other industries. You see some of the numbers there over time. And we work very tightly with government agencies that were mentioned or funding organizations that were mentioned previously. For example, MyTax is one that pairs industry with academia. And we work together, and we've secured 90 interns that from the academic world come and do a stage or a period of work at Ericsson. So Ericsson, depending who you ask, has been one of the best employers in Canada. Forbes, Glassdoor, Indeed, they all look at different parameters and ask different questions. But what you can see is we've consistently ranked very well as an employer here. A little bit of history. So I don't know if you were like me and history wasn't your strongest point in school, but I'll do a quick timeline of Ericsson and history in Canada. So starting from, oh my God, 1896 when Ericsson was founded. And then it took us a little bit of time, but we finally came to Canada in 1953. And then we went 9 years without any business in Canada until we got our first contract in 62. And I think that actually is quite reflective of the Swedish mindset, where you plan ahead, you look forward, you make decisions about planning into the future, and very patient, right? So to me, that was very, very representative. And then a couple of Canadian milestones happened quickly after that. For example, the underwater cable between the Prince Edward Island and the continent was an Ericsson delivery in 77. And also in 78, maybe our embassy friends remember this agency, International Development Agency. Ericsson built the largest hands-free system in Canada at the time in 78. So we were already dealing with wireless technologies in 78, imagine that. And then something really important happened in 84. And you have to remember the context in Canada in those years. This was Nortel's home base, right? And, most of the technology for wireless communications was being built and provided by Nortel. But in 1984, one of the operators or service providers here took a chance and gave Ericsson that opportunity. And we signed with what was called Rogers Cantel at the time. And for AMPS, AMPS is a technology, let's call it 1G, right? Everybody knows about 4G, 5G today. AMPS, I would say, falls in the family of 1G. So that was the first contract there in Nortel country for Ericsson in 84, and proved to be a turning point, because 2 years later, we set up an R&D center in Montreal. It was directly related to that contract, so I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then, as was shown earlier in the material, with all the talent coming out of these schools, with all the conditions that the governments were creating for fostering innovation and R&D, it didn't take long for even Ericsson in Sweden to say, you know what, there's something in Montreal. We got to give Montreal more importance in the group. And the Montreal office was given the mandate to develop the standard for amps and deamps for the rest of the world. So suddenly technology was coming out of Montreal and being exported for all the Americas and Asia, where this technology is used from the Montreal office. And a couple of years later, then we saw GSM, which was the equivalent standard, building up in Europe and really taking off in Europe. And the first contract in Canada for that technology with Microcell, and again Ericsson was fronting that, because obviously as a European country, we were a big part of the GSM effort and standardization. Fast forward a little bit more, and then you start to see Ericsson really settle into Canada and investing $1 million with one of the universities. $1 million in '97 was a lot of money, and why did we do that? Well, it was to build the talent, to build a funnel of talent. There was no real programs for telecommunications and the kind of engineering skills we needed. So we said, let's invest. And together with the governments at the time, it seemed like the best thing to do. Further on in the timeline became the Nortel acquisition. As you know, Nortel was broken up into pieces, and eventually Ericsson acquired the wireless division in Ottawa, where nearby city where Nortel was based. And you know what we did there is we actually added employees to the Nortel employees. We didn't disband this group. We continued this group, and we grew that group. And today we have a significant office in Ottawa around that. Fast forward a little bit more. 2018, a very important event in Canada was the signature of the ENCQOR 5G network. I'll also talk about that in my next part. This is a fantastic partnership between government and industry, 50-50 split of a $400 million 5G network. And this network is pre-commercial. It's a living lab or sandbox environment for small enterprises to use and to get ready for 5G and to start building solutions that will use 5G. Because the real networks, or the commercial networks, were still a few years away, especially in Canada. So it was an initiative between Ericsson and their multinationals and the governments to say, well, let's create an environment where these companies will have access to the technology before the commercial networks arrive, so they could start preparing, start building, start creating solutions that use 5G so that they can sell domestically and internationally. And it's a fantastic program because it thinks of many different facets. There's funding for the small and medium enterprises. There's funding for academic projects, so creating the talent of tomorrow. There's funding, of course, to build this network, and there's R&D funding as well. Then we move ahead 1 year, and then we sign a major global AI center in Montreal for Ericsson. So as was shown earlier, Montreal is a big AI hub, globally well-respected, well-established AI center. It only made sense that Ericsson also had some AI capabilities in Montreal to tap into that ecosystem. So we have 4 of these centers in the world, and one of them is in Montreal, and we're quite happy with that result. The growth and the response to this center has been very good. We now have a recognized team contributing to the Ericsson Group globally from this office. Okay, how it all started in Montreal. So like I said, that key deal with Rogers Cantel in '84. I mean, I wasn't yet at Ericsson at that time, but I'm told that there was one little line in the contract that said, you know what, we like you guys from Sweden, but we don't want to call Sweden. We want to call someone locally here. So can you set up a small team nearby? And with the fantastic pool of talent coming from the schools and with favorable government conditions, it was very easy for Ericsson to set up a very initial footprint in Montreal, and to support that first customer and to slowly start building. And from that small team, basically we grew to over 1,000 experts. And we started, like I said, with 1G, and then we went on to 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G, all from that office. And the mandates and the assignments coming from Sweden as an R&D center, and the contracts that we went on to win and deliver both in Canada, and we deliver also to the US and South America from this office. So it's been a very, very smart move, very profitable move, and very, very successful move for us to establish in Montreal. So Montreal today for Ericsson. So like I said, we're over 1,000 people, and we've been over 1,000 people for many years. Very consistent assignments coming in from all our business units. We're actually a mini Ericsson here, because Ericsson is divided into different lines of business or business units, and Montreal has been given work from all those lines of business. So we're a bit of a hybrid center. We have a heavy R&D presence. We have a professional services organization that delivers on contracts, and we have a sales team. And like I said, we're one of 4 of these AI centers called Gaia, Global AI Group, that we deliver here from our team in Montreal. The picture is actually from our campus here in Ville-Saint-Laurent, in the western part of the island. So I was stated previously, a very healthy ecosystem in Montreal, winning conditions, favorable conditions. I talked about MyTax. I encourage you to look them up. They're fantastic at pairing talent to industry. I mean, we had a case for this global AI center where, of course, we hired AI expertise, and we had some of our own in-house already, but then we wanted a few extra PhDs, masters, and post-PhDs from the local universities. And it only took MyTax 5 months to find us 80 candidates for a funnel for 3 years. So for the next 3 years, we'll have a constant flow of 80 super talented individuals from the local universities. And a big thanks to MyTax for that. ENCQOR, like I said, is a 5-year initiative. It's a test bed with free access to 5G. There's funding available for qualified participants. There's funding for universities. So you're building that talent for the next wave of talent. And the network is in 5 cities: Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Quebec City, and Waterloo. And incidentally, those are the cities, as you saw, with a lot of tech presence. And it makes sense to put 5G signal there and to sort of create an ecosystem around that. And basically, we've been dropping 5G signal in innovation hubs. And to this point in time, we have 300 small and medium enterprises using the network freely to start testing their ideas, their solutions, whether they work in health, transport, education, manufacturing, all sectors, even agriculture. I've seen companies in all sectors trying to use 5G for the next innovation and 4.0 transformations. Like I said, favorable tax credits and funding, and others I've mentioned as well, from all levels of government, federal and provincial. And the governments will continue to provide tangible and intangible advantages to foster innovation, as you know, especially post-COVID now, or well, we're still in COVID, but I mean, eventually post-COVID, there will have to be tangible and intangible advantages to the environment here. Nearby universities already mentioned as well, with lots of talent. Low cost of living already mentioned as well. That's certainly a fact. And world-class ecosystems in AI and cybersecurity, gaming industry, life sciences, aerospace. Those were all mentioned as well. Easy trade from here. That's clear. Has been very clear for Ericsson, very clear for others as well. I mean, it really is a diving board for the Americas, for Europe, and for Asia. The governments have consistently had good trade relations, and we've certainly benefited from that. And that's my part. So probably I'll be around at the end for questions if there are some. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. It was really insightful. Very quickly, I'm going to go over this quick slide, and I think it's going to partly answer one of the questions we already have. What does Montreal International offer? Free and confidential services, whether you need some data, economic data, communication services. You're opening an office here, you need to augment the message to make sure that the ecosystem here knows about your opening. It's going to help your talent strategy. We can support you with press conferences, exclusive interviews, with some media. We facilitate relations with the government bodies, both federal and provincial level. We will help you connect with the right service providers to set up shop here. I mean, Canada as a whole is very business friendly. It's very easy here to operate and to open a branch, to open a subsidiary, especially when it comes from Europe. The regulatory framework here has a lot more to do with the US than with Europe, but at the same time offering some very nice benefits comparable to what you experience in Europe. So very good mix. We will also give you exposure and support you in obtaining the different incentives programs that are available for you, and your types of business. And we have a team that's called the Global Mobility Team, dedicated to obtaining work permits for your talent, that it would move from Sweden or anywhere to Montreal. And we also offer international recruiting solutions. So you don't find your talent in Montreal, despite the abundance of talent here. You're looking for someone with very specific skills. We do recruitment missions abroad, or virtual missions now. We also have recruitment events with the local universities, so to help you source that talent you're looking for. That's the kind of services we offer, free and confidential. We have 9 minutes left for the questions. So I see there is already a question, but do not hesitate if you have any other question. We have 9 minutes. So the first question is from Tove. I hope I pronounce your name well. Can any one of you assist with making applications for R&D funding? I can answer for Montreal International. Yes, we can. We can help you put a business plan together, or an application together, gather all of the elements to obtain R&D funding. There are some, in all transparency, one specifically R&D incentive from the federal government that usually requires the support from qualified and specialized consulting firm. So when that is needed, we would, knowing your business, we would try to match you with an advisory firm that has expertise and experience in your industry, so that you don't waste your time shopping for an advisory firm and you are not disappointed down the road. But in most cases, you don't need the services of a third party, the support of a third party, and we can assist you. Invest Québec as well administer some of the tax incentives, and they will also guide you. And I'm assuming, I don't mean to speak on behalf of Christina, but maybe Business Sweden can walk you through and help you a little bit on that front. Christina, do not hesitate.
Yes, Absolutely, yes. Yes, we can help you with the entry in Canada, and of course any specific questions in terms of Montreal and Montreal International would be the very supportive in that role. But yes, if you have any further questions, I would be happy to speak to you or email you after the sessions. Yeah.
So again, here you go.
I could add to that, if I may, that like I suggested in the beginning, if you have an interest in Canada, it is really worth contacting Montreal International and Business Sweden and the Trade Commissioner Service. The reason being that they have complementary information to each other, and also because these services, at least to a certain level by Montreal International and Business Sweden, but certainly by the Trade Commissioner Services, are offered for free, and they're always confidential. So I think it's in your best interest to contact everybody and ask about it. And you get detailed and informed information, particularly pertaining to your sector, and which can be tailored to you depending on your interests. So I, in your place, would definitely contact all three organizations about that, and all three can help you in complementary ways.
Do not hesitate to ask questions, folks. If you have questions for Paul, for Ericsson, do not hesitate. I think it would be, I have questions actually for Paul, but I'm going to keep them for offline. Some questions that we usually have, one of the questions that I had yesterday is, why Montreal? Why would I go to Montreal where, when it comes to developing IP, doing software development, or commercially develop my business? So for commercial purposes, a lot of Swedish companies, Nordic companies would go to New York. In New York, so on the commercial side, but also on the IP development side, in New York, yes, very big market, a lot of potential, but also a lot of competition. So it's a very large market you will compete in, and it will be a little bit of a challenge to make yourself a name in that large market that's pretty crowded. Again, I mentioned this before, retaining your talent is going to be a challenge. You need to come up pretty well funded. Your burn rate is going to be pretty high up there. Hiring some qualified talent, especially when it comes to tech talent, it's going to be 6 figures for sure. The rents are going to be expensive. And the tax rate for corporations is higher than in Quebec. It may seem counterintuitive, but it's higher than in Quebec. So yeah, proximity with a large market. You have that sort of brand name of being in New York, but there is a cost associated to it. When it comes to the West Coast, Silicon Valley, yeah, a lot of talent, same thing. A lot of competition for the same talent. You're going to run the salary race. And the other thing, and I was speaking with a Swedish company, like I mentioned earlier yesterday, and they said, oh, we have a small team in California, and it's such a hassle to get on the phone with them, to get on video conferences with them, because I have 9-hour difference. So I need to either have them wake up early, or I need to finish my day late. And my understanding, my little experience is that in Sweden, days finish a little bit earlier than in France, for instance, or in Southern Europe. So that's sort of the drawback of having teams in California. Yes, there is talent. There are big players out there. They can poach your talent, by the way. And in order to find some overlap to communicate with your teams, you're going to have them wake up early, or you finishing your day late. While in Montreal, that can be your bridge between the West Coast and Europe. It's 6-hour difference. The flights are also a lot shorter. It's a lot shorter to get from Stockholm to Montreal than it would be to get from San Francisco to Stockholm, obviously. So it's, provided, and when we speak to Nordic companies, winters are not too much of an issue, provided you're comfortable with cold winters. Montreal is probably an obvious option. That you're not really making any mistake. And when it comes to quality of life and outdoors and after work life, it's also a lot more comparable to what you experience in Sweden, in my opinion. These are questions that we usually get. We have 3 minutes left, and so I can only encourage you to ask questions. I think we would have time for a couple others. Otherwise, we would give you a couple minutes back.
As we wait for perhaps questions,
Sure.
I'd like to build on something that
Sure.
was your reply to Tuve just a second ago.
Sure.
Tuve, you may be interested to know that Vinnova, the Swedish Agency for Innovation, is very active, and it has elected for the moment 7 countries around the world that it focuses on, and Canada is one of them. And for all the reasons that the good folks in Montreal International have pointed out, Montreal is a very interesting place in Canada to look at. And Business Sweden, Christina's colleagues, and we in the Trade Commissioner Service have very good contacts in Vinnova. And Vinnova will definitely be able to also give you information and assist you in things related to R&D development and funding, which is not only in Canada, but also in partnership with Canadian players. And that's also something that you want to talk about with both us in the Trade Commissioner Service and Business Sweden. And maybe you can join that with the promotions and services and incentives and schemes that Montreal International will be able to tell you about as well.
To add on that, Tuve, maybe you remember the slide that Hannah presented regarding the VC scene in Montreal, pretty vibrant. If what you had in mind by R&D funding, I assumed initially from your question that you're referring to tax incentives, but if equity funding is also part of your strategy, we can do warm intros with the VC landscape here in Montreal. We can't guarantee you any meeting because VCs, as you know, are not necessarily easy to catch. But if you have a good business model, interesting business model, and we know there can be a fit with a VC here, we will be happy to make a warm intro. Unless we have any other question, I think we can wrap it up. I'd like to take a moment to thank Uffe again and Christina for making this happen. And obviously, Paul, really appreciate having you here. I think it's quite amazing what you're doing in Montreal. I think you've been present in Montreal. Ericsson has been present in Montreal before I was born, so it gives you an idea of the investment Ericsson has done in Montreal and the commitment of Ericsson in Montreal. Quite amazing.
Yeah, we're very happy to be here in Montreal, and we work with Vinnova, Business Sweden, and Montreal International. So part of that community or Swedish community as well, for sure.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
all.
much.
Thank you all for showing up.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.